There's something chilling about a story that feels like it could happen to anyone. No haunted castles, no ancient curses, just ordinary people stumbling into the kind of horror you don't see coming. The kind of terror that leaves scars long after the moment has passed. Today, we're diving into 4 disturbing horror stories, each one rooted in real accounts and unsettling encounters. And by the end, you'll realize that sometimes, reality writes the darkest tales. Let's begin with an unsettling tale from a quiet suburban neighborhood. One of those places where life feels safe, predictable, and almost idyllic. Daniel, a young father, had just moved into his dream home with his wife and their newborn daughter. Everything seemed perfect: tree-lined streets, polite neighbors, and the comforting silence of suburban life. But that illusion quickly began to unravel. Within a week, Daniel started noticing something strange. Each morning, a small toy would appear on his front porch. A toy car one day, a doll's shoe the next, a plastic ring after that. He assumed it was local kids playing a harmless prank. But as the days passed, the gifts kept coming. Every single morning, thinking he'd put a polite end to it, Daniel left a note asking whoever it was to stop. That night around 3 a.m., he was startled awake by a soft tapping on the window. Peering through the glass, he saw no one. But there on the porch was a single baby's pacifier, identical to the one his daughter used. Now alarmed, Daniel reviewed his security footage. What he saw chilled him to the core. At exactly 3:33 a.m., a tall figure in a hood walked up to his porch, gently placed the pacifier down, and silently vanished into the darkness. Police were called, but they found nothing. No fingerprints, no leads, no resolution. Daniel moved out within a month, unwilling to risk another night in that house. It wasn't haunted. There were no ghosts. But the fear was real, because sometimes the most terrifying presence isn't supernatural. It's another human being, hiding in plain sight just outside your window in the dead of night. Strange, right? But hold on, the second story will make you question every stranger you've ever passed by. This next story comes from a college student named Maya. She lived in a quiet, low-crime town and worked late shifts at a local bookstore. Walking home alone at night had never been an issue, until one unforgettable Friday. As she locked up the store around 11 p.m., she noticed a man standing across the street. He wasn't moving. He wasn't saying anything. He was just staring. His presence was unsettling, but Maya tried to stay calm. She tightened her grip on her bag and walked quickly toward her apartment, hoping it was all in her head. But it wasn't. The man followed. Not directly behind her. He kept his distance. Always on the opposite side of the street. Every time she turned a corner or crossed the road, he mirrored her movements. She ducked into a convenience store, lingered there for several minutes, hoping he'd go away. But when she stepped outside, he was still there, watching, following, silent. When Maya finally reached her apartment building, she rushed inside and locked the door behind her, trembling with relief. But then footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps in the hallway, getting closer. They stopped directly outside her door. Heart racing, she called the police. When they arrived, they found the man standing just outside, with a knife in his hand. He didn't run. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. No explanation. No known connection to Maya. Nothing, just a silent, shadowy figure who had followed her home. To this day, Maya doesn't know why he chose her, or what he might have done if she hadn't locked the door. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the quietest ones, the ones who don't yell, who don't chase it but just follow, patiently, without a single word. Unnerving? Well, brace yourself, because the third story comes from the world of rideshare driving, something thousands of people do every single night. Jordan was a part-time Uber driver in Chicago, driving mostly on weekends for extra cash. It was a Saturday night when he got a request from a user with no profile picture and a username made up of random numbers. The pickup location was a dark alley in an industrial part of the city. Jordan hesitated but decided to take the ride anyway. It was close, and he figured it was someone trying to avoid surge prices in the main area. When he arrived, the alley was completely empty. He waited for a few minutes when the back door of his car suddenly opened. A woman slid into the back seat without saying a word. She wore a black hoodie, head down, hair covering her face. Jordan greeted her, asked for the destination, silence. After a few moments, she mumbled an address, a location Jordan didn't recognize but entered into the GPS. As they drove, Jordan tried making small talk. Nothing. When they passed under a streetlight, Jordan caught a glimpse of her face in the rearview mirror. It was wrong. Her skin was unnaturally pale, eyes completely black, no whites at all. Panic surged through him, and he asked if she was okay. No response when they reached the destination, a deserted warehouse. The woman opened the door, stepped out and whispered, "Thank you for the ride, Jordan." Now here's the kicker. He never told her his name, and when he checked his app later, there was no record of the ride. No request, no payment, nothing. Some encounters leave you with questions you'll never be able to answer. Still with me, because this last story will make you look over your shoulder tonight. This happened to a hiker named Elliot in 2025. Right here in the U's, Elliot was an experienced outdoorsman who loved camping alone in remote locations. One summer weekend, he set off into a dense forest in Oregon, miles away from the nearest town. By late evening, he set up camp, started a fire, and settled in for the night. Around midnight, he woke up to the faint sound of singing. Soft, melodic, almost like a lullaby. Confused and a bit unnerved, he stepped out of his tent. The forest was pitch black, but the singing continued. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Grabbing his flashlight, Elliot scanned the area. Nothing. Thinking maybe it was another camper nearby, he called out. No answer. He sat by the fire, heart racing. As the singing grew louder and closer, then it stopped. Dead silence. Suddenly, Elliot felt a presence behind him. A cold breath against his neck. He spun around, shining his light. Nothing. The next morning, he packed up and left without looking back. But when he reached his car, he found something carved into the driver's side door. The words, "Thank you for listening," etched deep into the metal. Who or what had been in the woods with M. Night remains a terrifying mystery. Wild, isn't it? But what makes these stories even scarier is that they're not about ancient legends or distant folklore. They're about people, everyday people, who found themselves in moments where the normal turned sinister. Because sometimes, horror doesn't knock on your door, it's already inside your world. And if you're wondering whether things like this still happen in 2025, the answer is yes. Horror doesn't care about the year, the place, or the person. It finds its way into the cracks of everyday life, turning the ordinary into something unforgettable. Ever notice how horror feels the most real when it creeps up in familiar places? A front porch, a city street, the backseat of your car, or even a quiet forest. It's the way these stories turn everyday moments into nightmares that makes them stick with you long after you've heard them. And maybe that's the real reason we tell these tales, not just to scare ourselves, but to remind us to stay aware, because the world is full of shadows, and not all of them come from the dark. So here's a thought before we wrap up. Have you ever had a moment that felt off? Something you couldn't explain, a chill on your skin, a shadow you thought you saw move, a sound you knew wasn't supposed to be there. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. If you've got a story like that, I want to hear it. Drop it in the comments. Maybe your experience will be the next one we feature. And if you're craving more real-life horror stories that blur the line between reality and nightmare, don't miss the next video, because in a world like ours, you never know what's waiting around the corner.